Welcome to An Icon, where confidence meets creative power. I'm here to help you step into the woman you know you're meant to be, visually, energetically, creatively, and in business. This show is for the woman who's done playing small, done hiding behind safe visuals, done shrinking her identity to fit into spaces she's already outgrown. An Icon is about becoming undeniable through your presence, through your style, through your story, through the way you show up in your business. Because your next level isn't just about strategy, it's about identity. It's about becoming the woman your business has been waiting for, the woman who is seen, remembered, and paid accordingly. So if you're ready to elevate how you show up, refine your visual identity, and build a brand that feels powerful and aligned with who you really are, you're in the right place. Let's build your icon era. Hello, and welcome back to An Icon podcast. Hope you've got your seatbelt on because this is a spicy one. We've got a lot to cover today, and I'm very excited to get into this topic. I have been creating a lot of content over on Instagram. If you don't follow me already, head over to @CamryHill on Instagram. It's where all the action and fun happens. But I've been recording and posting a lot of content around, the things that I'm so passionate about as a creative director, and talking about the sameness that I am seeing online. And we're going to be talking about that today, as well as breaking down some current campaigns that are working really well from bigger brands, because I think there's a lot to learn when we look at bigger brands that have been around for a long time, what they're doing, things that we can learn from them and implement as female entrepreneurs. So I want to talk about something that is driving me absolutely insane at the moment, and that is the amount of incredibly intelligent women who are running businesses and are creating the most painfully boring content. Before you come for me, I say this with a lot of love because you deserve better. And so does your business, because I see the same thing. Women walking into cafes, laptops open, coffee gets placed next to the laptop, typing, walking down the street with a coffee in hand, or maybe they've got a phone in their hand. Shot of you wearing a blazer when you never actually wear blazers in real life. And then we wonder why nobody remembers that, why no one is stopping their scroll, why no one is paying attention to your content and to your visuals. And I think there's a really important distinction here. Content isn't automatically creative just because you filmed it on a nice camera or hired an iPhone creator. I want to say that again. There are a lot of amazing women and business owners that own a nice iPhone who film content, but just because they do that does not mean that you're all of a sudden going to have these amazing visuals. There has to be strategy and creativity before you step in front of the camera, right? I wanted to look at some of the big campaigns happening in Australia right now, and I want to break down 3 of them from a creative director's perspective, because I do this all day long as I'm scrolling Instagram, as I'm doing research, as I'm just looking into things. And this is a huge reason I became a creative director, is because I was just like geeking out over branding and marketing and what bigger businesses were doing, and seeing what's working and understanding like the creative direction and the concept behind marketing and ads and what branding is doing. I geek over it all the time. So I thought this would be really fun to break down some current and relevant campaigns from companies who have $1 million budgets. And no, you do not have to have $1 million budget. I have a huge audience of female business owners who are pretty much solopreneurs or have a small team, and I work with women every day that don't have $1 million budgets, and we are able to put together an insane creative direction and content plan and visuals that still look amazing and stop the scroll and do its job, right? So I am breaking these down from a really high level point of view where it's like, okay, look at what these big brands are doing and why it's working, and how can we adopt these same ideas and implement them into our businesses as female entrepreneurs. So, you don't need their budget, but we do need their thinking. So the first one is Cadbury collaborated with MCoBeauty. And I really think this one is very fascinating because it is makeup and food or chocolate collaborating, and they teamed up for a limited edition collaboration. Chocolate and makeup. What an interesting combination, right? The collaboration includes Cadbury Dairy Milk Watermelon Chocolate inspired by MCoBeauty's Watermelon Glow range, as well as Cadbury inspired makeup products. And this is exactly the kind of thing I want female entrepreneurs to start paying attention to. Because if you looked at these two brands separately, you would not necessarily think, yes, this is the perfect partnership. And that's why it works. It's unexpected. It creates curiosity. You see it and immediately think, wait, what? Like, is this chocolate or is this makeup? And if you see them in store, it looks like a makeup confectionery. But there's makeup on the stand as well. It just creates this curiosity and unexpectedness. And that is the marketing strategy. Not every collaboration needs to make logical sense. Sometimes the most interesting creative ideas sit in this overlap between two worlds. So what's the lesson here? Stop trying to make your brand make sense to everyone. Listen to that again. Stop trying to make your brand make sense to everyone. I see so many women trying to make their content incredibly predictable because they think that that's what clear messaging means. But clarity doesn't mean boring. You can be incredibly clear at what you do while still creating something that people have not seen before. And this is my bread and butter, ladies. This is the thing that I obsess over, is finding your unique edge, what makes you so unique, and then bringing to life visuals that are so new and different and fresh and unexpected. That is my bread and butter. It is something that I love to do. So I want you to ask yourself, what are two completely different worlds that I can bring together? Maybe you're a business coach who's obsessed with interior design. Maybe you're a photographer who loves psychology. Maybe you're a nutritionist who's deeply into fashion. Maybe you're a lawyer who has a wicked sense of humor. There is probably something sitting in your personality, your interests, or your life that you've decided is irrelevant to your business. It might actually be the thing that makes your brand memorable. And I'm going to tell you that it is, because I work with so many women who come to me and I deep dive into their brand and their personality and the things that they enjoy. And I pick it apart like a little puzzle, okay? It's like deconstructing something and then putting it back together in a completely different way. And I get the feedback from the women that I work with that are like, I never thought about it like that. Or this is what I've always wanted, but I never really knew how to bring it together, right? It's having a different eye on your business to see it from a completely different lens. And that is where the magic happens, I promise you, is when you look from that perspective. Okay, let's get into the second one, another food category. This is Pizza Hut. And they recently, their recent Australian campaign is built around this idea. It's actually really funny. You should go to their Instagram page and watch these videos. I was laughing to myself yesterday when I was watching them. Is how bad do you want good? And what I love about this campaign is that they didn't play it safe. The creative deliberately exaggerates the desire for really good pizza. It's playful, dramatic, it's a little ridiculous, and that's the point. They've created a personality. They have made fun of these scenarios. And this is where I think that so many personal brands are missing the mark. They are trying so hard to sound professional, polished, helpful, overly educational, but nobody is emotionally attached to professional. They are attached to personality, especially if you're marketing online and you are using online platforms to get eyeballs on your business, you have to have personality. You can't be bland. You can't be overly professional. And this educational day and age of like overly teaching is long gone. So the lesson in this campaign, and again, go over to their Instagram and have a watch. It was honestly making me laugh so hard, but they have all these different scenarios of people who are in like almost life or death situations where they're like catching on fire. And I think another guy was like fainting in the park and someone comes to rescue them, but there's a pizza there instead. And they choose the pizza over saving the person. It's like insane, but it goes back to the campaign name of how bad do you want good? But I went and watched all of them. I was just like, this is really clever. And it honestly wasn't something that would have been overly difficult to produce. They obviously have a pretty decent budget, but I want you to think about from this perspective of like, your personality is part of your creative direction when you think about how you want to shoot content and how you want to market your business. If you are naturally funny, your content should probably be funnier. If you're dramatic, let's be a little bit more dramatic. If you're blunt, stop writing like a corporate LinkedIn department. If you're weird, lean into your weird, because I would rather see a woman with a strong, recognizable personality create something slightly polarizing than watch another perfectly polished reel that could have been made by 700 other women in the same industry. Okay? And I'm someone who is online a lot, looking at lots of different content, dissecting what's working, what's not working, and honestly, I'm bored. I'm bored of seeing a lot of the same things. And this is where creative direction becomes so important, because it's not just asking, what should you post? You're asking, how should your brand make people feel? And that's a completely different question. Now, let's get into campaign number 3. This is Honda. And their recent campaign is called Young MacDonald Had No Farm. And again, a bit of a funny twist, something really unexpected. And what I love about this is that they took something incredibly familiar, which is a nursery rhyme, and they completely flipped it. The campaign follows a modern city professional and essentially asks, you don't live on a farm, so why are you driving around in a giant farm tractor? It's funny, it's culturally recognizable, and most importantly, it's an idea. It's something that hasn't been created before. And Honda's not just like showing us a car. They weren't just filming someone getting into a car and driving beautifully through the city. They created this entire storyline around it. And again, go to Instagram and watch these videos, but they literally had like a tractor in the city, and they had this guy trying to get on the tractor with all of his groceries, and they're like falling off, and they was trying to take a girl on a date night in the tractor. It was just funny and so captivating, and you wanted to watch the whole thing. They created an unexpected story around the product. So the lesson here for you female entrepreneurs is stop documenting and start conceptualizing. This might actually be the biggest piece of advice for your content for the entire rest of the year, because I think we've become obsessed with documenting our business. This, come spend the day with me. Here's what I did today. Behind the scenes, here's me working. Yes, that is sometimes useful. But if your content is documentation, your audience is basically watching you like they are watching their security cameras. And your brand needs more than that. So I want you to ask yourself, instead of saying, what can I film? Ask yourself, what's the idea? And then reverse engineer it. If you're a business coach talking about burnout, don't just film yourself sitting at your desk talking about burnout. What could the visual metaphor be? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do you turn that into a visual conception? If you're a stylist talking about becoming more confident, don't just film yourself putting clothes on a rack. I've been there and I've done that about 10 years ago. I've done that, guys. It worked back then. It doesn't work anymore, okay? What could that transformation look like? What could it feel like? How can you visually bring that to life? If you're a photographer talking about motherhood, don't just film another baby or another mother holding her baby. What's the storyline? What's the visual world? What's the unexpected element? That's creative direction. Now, this is where the podcast is going to get a little more spicy, but we like spicy around here. And if I'm honest, if something comes up for me, I just need to say it. And I have a really good example of how content can get just repeated and repeated and repeated, and how this has happened in my own business. So I did my podcast launch in a car park, or part of it in a car park. Which was very unexpected. I shot with an amazing iPhone creator, Tiffany, and it ended up being the coolest footage that we got was in the car park. We didn't know if it was going to work, but then it ended up working. I used that footage on my Instagram and to launch my podcast. And I did not do that because I had seen it anywhere else. It was just part of the storyline and the visual creative that I wanted to make because it made sense for my business and my podcast being called An Icon. But since then, I've seen 3 different people replicate this exact concept. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I invented the car park. I haven't. I will not be the first or the last person to shoot in a car park. But this is the lesson that I want you to just stop and take a minute to listen to this is I want you to ask yourself a question. When you're inspired by something you see online, does this actually make sense for my business? Or am I doing it because it just looked cool, or I saw someone else do it, or suddenly everyone else is doing it? I saved it on Pinterest and I decided I needed to recreate it. Is that why you're doing it? Because there's a huge difference between taking inspiration from something and then blindly replicating the visual. And this is where I think people misunderstand creative direction, because creative direction isn't like, oh, that's cool, let's just do that. Or, I saw this thing online and I want to replicate it directly, right? That's cool. Why does it work, and how can we translate that idea into our world, into our brand, into our business? That's the difference. You can absolutely be inspired by somebody, and you can borrow a visual language. You can take a concept and let it spark something within you, but don't just copy the surface. Understand the idea underneath it. Because I'll tell you that when I saw this idea replicated multiple times, I was like, this is so epic that I set a standard. But then there was part of me that was thinking, does this make sense for that person's business? And that's where I really want you to just sit with that, whether you are inspired by a car park photo shoot or if it's something else. I want you to genuinely think, do I like this because it's cool and trending and I've not seen it anywhere else, or is it because it genuinely feels right for your business and tells the story for your business? Because that's where I think that so many people go so wrong. I'm going to tell you a real life example of a client of mine where this will all make sense. I was putting together a launch campaign for her business, and we shot in 2 locations, the beach and a studio. And if you looked at that on paper, you could easily say, okay, beach shoot, studio shoot, cool, people shoot at those 2 locations all the time. But this is not what made the campaign work. We didn't start with, where are we going to shoot? We started with the question of what makes her unique. What is different about her? What is the story behind her business? What is the transformation that she creates for her clients? What does that actually look and feel like? And then we build an entire campaign around that. We create a visual storyline around her business. So every location, every outfit, every image, video, everything had a job. It wasn't, let's just get some pretty photos or some B-roll. It was, what story are we telling? And then, because I'm me, I brought a giant mirror to the beach. I literally have a video of me hauling this big ass mirror to the beach because I had this idea, not because I saw it anywhere else. I'm going to tell you that right now. It came to my brain, and this is how my brain works as a creative director, is ideas pop into my head and then I put it to paper and bring it together. And that was the creative edge. We brought it onto the beach and we had this amazing reflection and these unexpected visuals that didn't necessarily make sense. Like, no one brings a mirror to the beach, but it was this visual metaphor for her business. I didn't go to the beach because beaches are trending. I said, let's make this make sense for your business. And the beauty of the beach and the sunrise made sense for her business, but we made it different. We told a story. And that's what I want you to think about when you are going into making content, is how can we take the idea where we're already exploring and creating a visual moment that people haven't actually seen before? How can you make it different? And that's the difference between just content and creative direction. The beach wasn't the idea, the studio wasn't the idea, the mirror wasn't even the idea, the storytelling was the idea. Everything else was there to help us tell that story. Now, I just want to really quickly touch on generic B-roll. And again, I am not coming for you. I am just giving you lovingly advice on how you can stand out in your industry. We do not need another video of you typing on your laptop or drinking out of a coffee or walking with your iPhone. We definitely don't need you pretending to work while someone films you from 6 different angles. Unless there is an actual creative reason for that shot. B-roll is not a strategy. It is not a creative campaign. A camera operator is not a creative director. And I say that with so much love, but a photographer and someone who is shooting iPhone footage has a very different job to a creative director. And this is why women hire me, because I am that gap between their business and the actual visuals that come to life. So I want you to think about this from the perspective of the brands that we just went over. They are not successful because they have nice big cameras and they bring in these big film crews and they have a large budget. Those campaigns are successful because somebody sat in a room and said, what if we do this? They came up with a creative, cool idea that didn't already exist. And that's what I want you to bring into your business. Not this big budget, not bringing in another celebrity or their media spend. It's their willingness to have an idea. So I love to leave you guys with some implementation and how you can actually utilize this in your day-to-day business practices. So here's what I want you to do the next time you see something online that makes you think, oh my God, I need to do this. I want you to stop. And before you recreate it, ask yourself, why do I like this? Is it the location, composition, styling, story, contrast? Is it an unexpected element? Is it the emotion? What is actually making that work? Does it make sense for your brand? That's the next thing that I want you to ask yourself. Would this visually make sense if nobody had shown it to you first? Would it tell a story? Does it connect to what you sell? Does it communicate something about you? How would this look if it belonged to me? This is a really big one. How can I recreate this, but translate it into an idea into my brand world? Because I don't want you to become less inspired. That is not what I'm talking about. Pinterest is basically my second brain. I just want you to become more discerning. I want you to be able to look at something and say, I love that, and then not copy it. Instead, I want you to take the underlying idea and turn it into something that could only exist inside your brand. Because that's where your best creative work is going to come from, not from trying to look different, but from actually being different. So as your creative director best friend, I'm going to give you 3 things that you can implement into your marketing this year. First one is create an unexpected connection. Take something from your world that has nothing to do with your industry and bring it into your brand. Find that unexpected overlap. Collaboration with other brands is such a great way to grow. The second one is I want you to turn up your personality. Stop trying to sound like everyone else in your industry. Your personality should influence your visuals, your words, your humor, your photography, and the way that you tell stories. The third one is build a concept before you pick up the camera. Don't start with what B-roll should I get, start with what's the idea. This is why I care so much about creative direction, because I don't think most women need more content. I think that they need better ideas. They don't need another 30-day content calendar telling them to post a reel on Monday, a carousel on Tuesday, and behind the scenes photo on Wednesday. They need to know, what does my brand actually look like? What world am I creating? What do I want people to remember? And what can I do visually that makes someone stop scrolling and think, oh, that's her? Because I can promise you that people know my content before they read my name. Because it is so me, it is so on brand. The fonts, the colors, the wording, my brand voice, all of those things have been considered before I press post. Because in a world where AI can generate another perfectly acceptable piece of content in approximately 3 seconds, being acceptable is no longer the goal. Being recognizable is. And that's what I want you to think about this year. Not how do I make more content, but how do I make people remember me? So please, for the love of God, put the laptop down and go have an idea. And don't you forget that you are an icon. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of an Icon podcast. I absolutely love giving you guys all of these juicy takeaways. I hope that you got something out of this today. If you did, please leave a review, leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, and let me know what your biggest takeaway was. I also want you to reach out to me on Instagram or head over to my website at camryhill.com. And if you have a rebrand or a photo shoot or a video shoot coming up in the next 90 days, let's work together. I have very limited availability as a creative director, but you can get in contact with me, get on my wait list, and we can chat about working together.